strong enough that people would be literally thrown to the ground. They couldn't stand. And if you were next to tall buildings, windows falling out of tall buildings would be a tremendous hazard.
Anything that falls from a significant height is basically just like a stray bullet. Now add to that glass, which is in those large structures tempered and made to withstand significant wind. It's basically falling blades. So the amount of trauma that those things would cause would be enormous.
Many of the older brick buildings would collapse. The older concrete frame buildings would collapse outright. You'd see floor slabs that were just pancakes with people stuck in between them.
You're going to get amputations, pneumothorax, which are collapsed lungs, crushed hearts. If you're bleeding out and you can't get to the hospital, you will die.
Even people in LA's modern steel frame skyscrapers, the kind that are designed to withstand large quakes, aren't totally safe.
At the very least, the building would begin to sway. For such a large earthquake, we'd anticipate that we'd see collapses of some of those buildings as well.
In a few minutes, the shaking will be over. But for those who survive the initial blow, the horror is just beginning. Fires, caused by broken gas lines and fallen high-voltage wires, will spread throughout the city.
If you start enough fires simultaneously, you'll overwhelm the resources to put it out, and instead of slowly putting the fire out, the fire will start to grow. And of course, if fires get large enough, and they just keep growing, that's what we call a conflagration.
With water mains and roadways severed, a post-quake firestorm in LA could last for days, even weeks. Thousands of people trapped in collapsed buildings or too badly injured to move will be incinerated. Eventually, even a fire this size will burn itself out, but the community will continue to suffer.
It's not just the deaths. Deaths are huge. But then you have 6 months, a year, 2 years of recovery time for everyone else. And not just people that are sick, but people that are displaced, people that don't have homes, they don't have jobs anymore, they don't have possessions, they don't, their families have been ripped apart. Imagine afterwards trying to get your life back together again as an individual, as a system, as a business. I mean, it has huge ramifications.
And this is just one city, in one country, in the entire world. Imagine the consequences of a simultaneous global quake in poorer areas around the globe.
Those buildings can't survive. Those people have nowhere to go, and they are packed. There's so many people in a little square meter. So it's something that you have to think about.
Catastrophe on a biblical scale.
Earthquakes are a warning. They have taken place throughout human history, and they are an indication that God is still in control of Earth.
The next sign centers on a disaster that's less familiar, but could be even more catastrophic. Death from above, caused by one of the most powerful forces in the universe. The investigation into the truth behind the 7 signs prophecy has already uncovered a massive amount of evidence. To devout believers in the prophecy, the meaning of that evidence is clear.
God just sends sign after sign, event after event, trying to wake people up.
To these evangelical Christians, it reveals God's master plan for the destruction of the world and the second coming of Jesus Christ.
The book of Revelation is meant to paint a picture of the total devastation of the earth in preparation for the day of judgment.
Incredibly, modern science confirms many of the doomsday scenarios foretold in these mysterious prophecies.
Scientists agree that many of the features of the end of the world may resemble phenomenon, catastrophes that are described in Revelation.
We also now know that the prophecy builds into a crescendo of disasters. A series of 7 within 7 within 7 more signs. All of this is terrifying enough, and yet there are still more signs to investigate. Indeed, the next sign threatens something so important that without it, life on Earth would cease to exist. Our sun rises each day, bringing light, warmth, and life. Our world relies on the sun's rays for its very existence. But as the 7 signs continue to unfold, what happens when the sun and stars instead bring death, devastation, and darkness? Biblical prophecy predicts that when the 4th trumpet sounds, hell will break loose in the heavens.
And I beheld, when he had opened the 6th seal, and lo, the sun became black as the sackcloth of hair.
Book of Revelation, Revelation 6, verse 12. The 6th sign, the darkening of the sun.
You have the sun turning dark and the moon turning towards blood. It's a transitional period into what would be called the wrath of God or the Great Tribulation.
When the prophecies talk about the sun turning dark, I don't think it's going to be anything that's caused by man. I think this is God, in essence, turning the light out.
The sun has been an object of fear and veneration for humankind since the beginning of time. Solar eclipses are such terrifying experiences for our ancestors that they often unleash widespread panic. But the dire predictions of this sign warn of something more than the temporary effects of an eclipse. Could the 6th sign mean that our sun might be darkened permanently? Could we plunge into a cosmic darkness so devastating that it would be interpreted by many as an act of God or a sign of the apocalypse? Surprisingly, scientists say that the possibility does exist. And ironically, a planet-wide darkness could start with the brightest light in the universe.
Gamma ray is a part of the electromagnetic spectrum. It's basically light.
Gamma rays are created by electromagnetic radiation and are emitted during radioactive decay.
If normal light is like a feather hitting you on the cheek, a gamma ray is like a bullet. A single gamma ray photon has 1 billion times the energy of a visible light photon. That's what makes them dangerous. If they impact a cell, they can disrupt the cell. If they impact DNA, they can actually shatter or alter the DNA molecule.
While gamma rays were discovered over a century ago, we are only now just starting to learn how deadly they can be. As Dr. Neil Garrels explains, the big breakthrough in gamma ray research comes during the Cold War.
Nuclear weapons produce flashes of gamma rays. And in 1962, President Kennedy signed the Nuclear Test Ban Treaty with the Soviets. And this treaty outlawed testing of nuclear weapons above the Earth's atmosphere. The United States built a series of satellites to monitor this treaty. So these satellites had gamma ray detectors on them. And lo and behold, they actually discovered flashes of gamma rays.
But the gamma rays are not coming from Russia.
Multiple satellites would see the flash at the same time, and it wasn't coming from the Earth. It was coming from deep space.
When scientists finally locate the source of these rays, they discover one of the largest explosions in the universe, the gamma ray burst.
Gamma ray bursts are second really only to the Big Bang as far as energy output. As far as we know, there are no bigger explosions in the universe. It's caused by a supernova, a very massive star that explodes. The inner part of the star